Jacob here, and today we're talking about female contest prep. We're going to talk about three important factors within the setup of a contest prep for females, and I'm going to be using a case study which was one of my clients, very unique case study that I think will give a great insight into why it's important to set things up properly and to make sure that you're doing a contest prep and the approach that you take is indeed quote unquote optimal, because otherwise you could be in big trouble. We were fortunate in this case to have saved the contest prep. Details on that soon. So firstly, starting point, if you have unhealthy relationship with food, you have binge eating disorder, you're already been dieting for a long period of time, you're on low calories, doing lots of cardio, and you're going to use a contest prep as a means to an end to improve your physique or to achieve your goal body composition and then just maintain it, scrap it, can it, do not compete, do not hire a coach, do not pass go. Ace Ventura quote there, hope somebody got that. You need to make sure that you're starting from a strong position, and that's going to take a good off season. And that's going to mean that you're eating a lot of food, doing minimal cardio, you've been training for a while and have a significant amount of muscle mass and strength, or at least as much muscle as required by your division, and you have a very healthy relationship with food, your body, and you're wanting to do a contest prep because you're looking for a challenge, some self-development to test yourself, and it's not to necessarily change your physique, but it's an extension of your training career. And this is really important because if you don't start from a strong position, you are going to be in a very, very bad place when this is all said and done. You are going to develop most likely some form of eating disorder, body image disorder, and it's going to take you a very long time to recover and get back to health, both physically and mentally, because we have to remember, irrespective of division, when we choose to be a physique competitor, there are a number of things we choose to give up. Our physical and mental well-being is one of them, and we need to make sure that when we make that decision, the choice is for the right reasons, and we're doing everything we can to minimize adverse outcomes. So, the second thing is diet setup. So if we're starting on as many calories as possible, we're not going to be reducing intake excessively low. Now, when we talk about female athletes, we have one primary consideration, and that is to uphold hormonal health for as long as possible. It's inevitable sometimes to lose the menstrual cycle as a result of low energy availability, but in saying that, we want to minimize the onset of amenorrhea or the subclinical categories oligomenorrhea for as long as we can, which means we need to do things at a very slow and steady rate. We need to be including weekly refeeds and diet breaks within the duration of the contest prep to again increase energy availability so the body has sufficient calories and energy to produce hormones that are necessary for upholding health. So the diet setup and the way that we structure a diet, both acutely and chronically, is extremely important. So when I talk about acute, I'm talking about a microcycle. So a 7-day period, we want to be having at least 24 to 48 hour, if not more, days at calorie maintenance. And again, this is something that takes very diligent off-season to do properly, because we need to make sure that we're eating as many calories as possible, and the days we are reducing our calorie intake, there are subsequent days where we can start to reverse some of the downregulation of those hormonal systems that I spoke about. When we talk about diet setup on a more acute time scale, we don't always have to have the mentality of go hard or go home from start to finish. We need to incorporate diet breaks, which is a 5 to 10 day period at calorie maintenance, and again, this can reverse some of the metabolic downregulation and adaptations we see and prevent the onset of amenorrhea, like I mentioned. So really, really important to give yourself time when you're setting up a contest prep. Now, a quick note on refeeds. They aren't necessarily magic. However, what a lot of women do experience when they have one refeed or 1 day refeed of 24 to 48 hours, they will see a significant reduction in water weight. And this is because high calorie intakes and carbohydrates tend to have a therapeutic type benefit on reducing cortisol, and we see this drop in water because cortisol, when it's high, when production of cortisol and plasma cortisol, is high, we hold water. So they're not magic, and they're not necessarily fat burning. They're more of a sustainability tool, those shorter refeeds, that is. but very useful in eliminating water as we get closer to stage, and that brings me to peaking. If you're a figure athlete, obviously a reverse diet into your show is going to be ideal because it can maximize conditioning and fullness and just keep you nice and crisp. That means getting ready early and then stepwise increasing calories into the show so that you don't spill out. And again, we start to reduce the size of that energy deficit, which can not only get you losing body fat when you're still at a deficit, but it can start to fill out your glycogen stores, drop some water, and you'll be looking bang on. For fitness models and bikini athletes, we don't necessarily need any form of peaking. If you look great, you look great. Some small increase in carbohydrates, whether it's a front load, so the start of the week, 5 to 7 days before the show, or a back load, which is the day or two before the show, to your maintenance calories, or the calories and carbohydrate intake that you've been having on your refeed days can be more than adequate, and just see that little bit of popping glycogen, reduction in water, and ensure that you're looking on point come competition day. Now, peaking, what you don't need to do is cut water, take laxatives, take fat burners, change your training program completely, do more cardio. That's only going to lead to more water retention. We actually want to taper cardio down into the peak, into the show, the final week, and we don't need to take any diuretics or take extreme measures such as saunaing and things like that. Anything that's going to mess with your physiology is only going to increase variables that need to be managed. The more variables we need to manage come show day, the less likely you are to maximize your conditioning and stage day presentation. So keep it simple, stupid, soft back load or front load, and just keep doing what you're doing. We don't need to overhaul the diet or the training. So now I'm going to take you over to the case study, which is my client, Monique. She came to me 4 weeks out from her prep, distraught, distressed, and ready to throw in the towel because she didn't do things the right way, and unfortunately was with a coach who, had a very suboptimal, quote-unquote, bro-type mentality towards a contest prep, and we only had 4 weeks to get it right, and we got it right. She won first place, and I'm going to run you through her spreadsheet to show you, some of the things that we implemented during that phase. Here is Monique's spreadsheet. She is young as, started with me at 58.2, and she was competing in the fitness model category as well as the sports model category in the ICN, and we had 4 weeks. She was previously training 7 days a week with the whole, team no days off mentality, and hitting the iron extremely hard with quite a ridiculous amount of volume, which is no fault of her own. She was just very unaware of what she needed to do, in order to retain muscle, and what the focus was during times of energy restriction as it relates to resistance training. So we got her on a 5-day-a-week program, a lot more structure, moderated her volume, ensured she was recovering, and obviously, her deload guidelines then, she's an intermediate. She was doing cardio daily, so we dropped that down to 4 times a week, and just got her doing a brisk walk with, around 150 calories per session, 600 calories a week, and we tapered that down towards the end to just 2 times a week. And here was her setup at the start. So she started with me on a Thursday. I was very lucky that Monique had worked with us online in our 10 Weeks to Lean program last year, so she had some background knowledge and was very familiar with tracking calories and macros, so super useful and handy for me. It meant we could increase the flexibility of food choices in her diet, and she would be able to dial things in appropriately. Now, her starting diet consisted of 1,100 calories, and like I said, she was doing a lot of training, a lot of cardio, so that energy availability would have been very low, if not in the negatives, and I dare say leading to a lot of water retention, which is why she had stalled out for so long and was so frazzled as to why she wasn't making any visual or scale weight progress. Greens, fish, a protein shake and egg whites was what her diet consisted of. And moving into the subsequent weeks, I advised her to slowly start to introduce more flexibility and variation in her diet, obviously upholding the same meal timing and consistency, because we had to be very delicate as to how we approached the inclusion of more food and a flexible diet, as not to exacerbate any binging type behaviors. So we bumped up her calories. She had 1,600 Monday to Thursday, and I gave her 3 high days pretty much immediately. And we can see here that she went from 58.2, which was on the Wednesday, and she started to drop some weight. We held pretty consistent through the next week, and again, I suspect that it was the retention in water that was masking some of that fat loss. But we hit some new lows into the 3rd week, and this was when, obviously I wanted to, deplete her a little bit, squeezing out the sponge, so to speak, so that we could fill it right back up. And then going into the show, we started to bring things up a little bit Monday to Friday, getting her carbs up, and then on the Saturday, her peak was just a soft backload with 250, slightly below her high days back here. Obviously, I assessed all her visuals and her response to her high carb days so that we could get a gauge and an understanding of how she was responding to the diet. And just a bit of metabolic knowledge is key when you're working with contest prep athletes. So, yeah, she continued to drop weight when we bumped up her carbs, hitting new lows the day before her show, and then on the day hit a new low. Not necessarily indicative of a success, but it was a great sign that we had dropped plenty of water, and we can see there 58.2 to 55.4, significant amount of weight lost in 3.5 weeks, and we saved the contest prep. She wanted to compete pretty much after getting off the stage and enter another show in June, but I advised against that, and I said that our goal now is to recover, and we have hit the recovery diet hard, pulled back on the cardio. Calories are right back up, and we are going to spend the next 4 to 6 weeks, trying to gain back some healthy body weight and get her to 57 to 58 kilos before we then prepare for her next show, which is in Season B, September and October. So, guys, I hope you found that useful. Please, if you're starting a contest prep and your coach is not taking into consideration the 3 things that I discussed, then do your homework. Make sure you're doing your due diligence and researching before you go investing your time, effort, energy, money, and health. Health is a big one into someone who may not necessarily know what's best for you. So I please do your homework, ladies. And again, make sure you like this video, share it, because I really do think that a lot more females need to hear this, and we can start to make some headway in getting things right for female athletes when they set out to get on stage.